So it's all for play for still.
I think so. Do you want to bet against us?
Hello, Aston Villa fans, and welcome to a kind of bamboozled for the Love of Paul McGrath podcast here on a mental day is all that can be said. An absolutely crazy day from transfer rumors, conjecture, news, and everything. And I think with the day being that, you know, Liverpool play Arsenal, Villa obviously play Crystal Palace, and you've got West Ham. Have you got West Ham and Forest as well today? Plus, you've got Celtic and Rangers. Twitter is aghast. It's a perfect breeding ground for information, misinformation, misdirection, clickbait, whatever can happen, essentially shit posting. It's a perfect playground today with all the big games that are on and potentially the teams that can drive engagement. Now, saying that, obviously, it's been a mental morning from the point of view of rumor, conjecture, and I suppose turning on a sixpence, because by the time that I had put up this podcast and then checked Twitter, the news seemingly has changed from when just before I was going to do this podcast. But the main news today, I suppose, or the main thing I wanted to pop on and chat about is Aston Villa have signed somebody in Victor Lindelof. We'll go into more detail on him. I'm going to do a more detailed podcast in this, but I wanted to just mark this before I get this out of the way. I suppose really the conversation on this before we look into the Palace game, because I want the chat in the team sheet tantrum in the Palace game to be about the Palace game, if that makes sense. So I wanted to come on and acknowledge this. And Villa look like they're going to sign Victor Lindelof in a free transfer. It's absolutely going to split the fan base probably into 3/3. I think you're going to have the 1/3 people who think that this is an absolute nonsense signing, want nothing to do with it, want the whole board sacked off. You're going to think there's going to be a 1/3 of people who think that who are bemoaning SCR and PSR for this, and then you're going to have 1/3 of the fan base who are going to say this is a depth signing. It's somebody who's got experience, who's come in almost like who's coming to kind of help us with the experience point of view. And to be honest with you, I think outside of the sack off the board, I think everybody is right, because everybody holds a piece of the cake with regards to that. And that's not me sitting on the fence. I'm clearly in the depth signing a la Clement Longley point of view from Victor Lindelof. I prefer to be looking at Victor Lindelof in there for the next year in a free transfer than looking at a gaping hole at that right centre back position. Provided that we bring in reinforcements in the striking or in the forward area. And that's fine. Like, as I say, people who think that this is a disaster of a signing, you guys probably have an element of correctness in that too. And the people who think that this is PSR, SCR, you absolutely are 100% correct. Because Victor Lindelof would not be at Aston Villa only for financial restrictions. So let's get that one out of the way, and we'll do a small bit more on him. I want to sit down, I want to look at him properly and do a proper podcast on him as well over the coming days. The big one, I think, that's really kind of been the bolt out of the blue is the Emi Martinez conversation back out again. I posited a question in the the Villa event phone-in show that we had last night about if Martinez was to go and it was allow us to bring in further signings, would that be something that myself and Paddy, and actually I can't remember the first, I think it was Chris was the first caller that I asked that to, would that be something we'd be able to stomach? And I think the way that the news has come out today, the way that this is being framed is that Emi Martinez wants out of Aston Villa. His agent wants to push him out of Aston Villa and get him to Manchester United. And look, I'm all for, look, if any player wants to leave the club, they're more than entitled to leave the club. It's the way that players leave the club, I think, will always be the lasting memory. Now, half an hour ago, you asked me about Emi Martinez leaving Aston Villa, or about the Emi Martinez situation. I would say, yeah, he's gone. He's off. There's no way he's staying. Let's move on. Let's get younger at the position. Let's go. But it's going to take me a while to forget him getting sent off against United in the last day of the season, and then he moves to Manchester United. And I think that's pretty rational. I don't think there's no potential animosity, but I'm kind of going, yeah, look, go. And, you know, I don't want this drama in January. I don't want this drama in June. If you want to go, go. And just as I pressed go live on this podcast, then it turns out that Mike McGrath has reported that United don't want Martinez anymore, and they're going for Lammens from Royal Antwerp, and that's their number one target. So the fluidity here with regards to the transfer window and the hopscotch nature of how transfers work is going to like annoy us over the next 48 hours or the next 36 hours or however long is left in the transfer window. Less 20, what is it, 23 or 27 and a half hours, give or take a couple of minutes left in this transfer window. But it's worth noting that like all the possibilities, all the permutations from this, it kind of shows that anything is possible. Anything can happen in the next 36 hours or next, whatever I said there, 27 hours or whatever it is. And if Emi Martinez goes, the club need to be ready to pivot and to move. And I've got, like, with the names that are being mentioned, like, I would happily take Diogo Costa at this club. I would like Semi Lammens. What I've seen of him, I like. He's incredibly highly rated. Apparently, like, he, of all of the young goalkeepers, I think goalkeepers 23 or younger, or of any, actually, I think it might have actually been any goalkeeper in Europe, his numbers stacked up there in like the top 5 from a data point of view. Obviously, he's playing in the Belgian league. He's playing with Royal Antwerp and so on. Maybe we get Richie Delat to have a word there for Aston Villa, if he is to come, because I think he's still involved with Royal Antwerp, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong on that one. But look, the big thing here is that the names that are being linked, I would be, they're impressive names. Both of those guys are impressive based on potential and based on age and the subset that they've put on tape so far. I've only watched 2 of Samuel Lammens' games. I've watched a lot of Diego Costa, but I want to watch more of him. See what I actually think about him. I want to watch more of him in European football because and for Portugal, just to get a better feeling for him. But he's definitely somebody who would suit a higher line as well. But we'll get into more on him. So that's the main crux of this, and why I wanted to pop on was because it's the pivoting here, and you know, I'm not here to do any cleanup work for anyone. I don't have any, like, the only dog I have in this fight is the furtherment of Aston Villa. That's the only dog I have in this fight. I'm not here to do a cleanup operation for, you know, Emi Martinez if he stays. My opinion is if he goes, there will be a hint of disgust at the way it ended. Obviously being able to appreciate it, the fact that he brought us to the Champions League and all the moments he gave us, and, you know, the penalty saves and whatever, and how he blossomed at this club. I'm not here to do any cleanup work for how we've had to negotiate this transfer window, albeit, like, if I say to somebody that if I say in the podcast, and my belief is that we've been trying to do a transfer window with both arms tied behind our back, and we're trying to bob for apples, but there's no apples in the bucket at the moment. And how we got there, I've spoken about it before. I think this is a 3 or 4 year old problem from 3 or 4 years ago, and somebody's going to have to grasp the nettle at some stage. That is my belief. And if the club is smart and we can get players in the positions over the next 27 and a half hours, and it absolutely can be done, that if players leave or for us to get players in, the club need to be able to pivot. It's a mess. Like, it's a mess, but it's not a mess of like I firmly don't believe that it's a mess of the club's making currently. Like, if Emi Martinez's agent comes to Aston Villa and says he doesn't want to play tonight, he wants to explore the Manchester United move, like what do the club do? Like, there's like, you will go on social media and you'll see the club are idiots for selling him, and you'll go on social media and say, well, if he doesn't want to be at the club, sell him. You know, so what can you do in that instance? And we will never know what goes on behind closed doors in these conversations, specifically with agents, because, again, agents aren't beholden to anyone other than their transfer fees. You know, and that's the long and the short of it. Their job is to be a thorn in the club's side. And, you know, if that is the case, then, you know, that is the case. You just have to play that game, move on, and get the players in. Now, I am going to come to some of your comments as well, because I'm at risk of going down a rabbit hole of conversation here as well. But I did want to get this out of the way for myself so that I'm not discussing. Because I do still feel pretty positive in a way about this Crystal Palace game. I do think that potentially there could be a galvanizing force behind this. You know me, I'm always glass half full. I'm not going to sit here my natural disposition is to be glass half full, and I don't think I should have to apologize for that, albeit that people do ask me to at times. I don't think I should have to apologize for it, and I think that like I am glass half full about this game tonight, regardless of whether Martinez is in goals or not. And the reason I am is because we've seen what Marco Bizot. He's been like the game against Newcastle, the games he's played for Brest. You know, he's got good experience. It's not the days of Robin Olsen in goals anymore, and we will talk about that, I suppose, as the Crystal Palace game does transpire in probably in about an hour and a half, nearly 2 hours time. We'll be chatting about that at 5:45 later on this evening. But let's just come here to actually, before we go to your comments, I just want to say is that, like, for myself, my own mindset in this, and everybody's allowed to have their own mindset. I'm just talking about mine. I'm not saying that anybody's wrong to have theirs. Everybody feel the way they want to feel. I don't want to tell anybody how to fan. It's not my style. I've always said that in this podcast. This podcast is solely my own opinion. It's not trying to preach to anybody at all. I will move on very quickly from any player that leaves this club in the next 27 hours. I'll move on very quickly because at the end of the day, it's like, regardless of whether we have Ren and Stimpy playing as our two centre halves or whether we've got, you fucking put a garden gnome in goals and you expect him to stop shots. I still want Aston Villa to do well, and I still expect 11 players to go out and be befitting of Aston Villa. I don't care if we have a team that doesn't have a household name that's recognised. If we have a team, like the one I always go back to is, if we had 11 Mark Delaney's and Aston Villa won the League Cup, I couldn't give two hoots. Like that's really the reason I bring up Mark Delaney is whenever I used to pick my best Aston Villa team of my lifetime, Mark Delaney would be in it right back, and everyone would go, "Who the hell is he?" You know, that wasn't the Villa fan, obviously. If I was speaking to other Villa fans, like, who the hell is he? And I was going, probably one of the most committed defenders you have ever seen. And you guys will know where I'm going at here. You know what I'm going at here. You know, it's the success for the club, and that's always my overarching feeling as well. Yes, it would be nice to be able to do it with Mbappe and whoever else playing up top, and hopefully those days will come when we sort out this PSR. And it is good to have nice things, but there are still a lot of things that I will be clinging onto with this club, and willing it on to be the best. So that's just my little piece for myself on this as an explanation with regards to my glass half fulness. Now coming to some of your comments as well. Roland says, I can't believe the club are going to let Emi go 24 hours before the window closes. I'll be honest with you, I don't think they're going to have a choice. I think if his agent turns around and says he's not playing tonight, cheerio. That's what I would say. Like you have, do you want to elongate my own personal view is, do I want to elongate this drama into January and into next June? Because this drama is going to continue to come. Specifically, if we don't have Champions League, if we don't get Champions League football or any European football, like Villa, worst case, like let's just say worst case scenario, Villa finished 14th this season. Do you think this drama isn't going to come with Emi Martinez again? I think there comes a stage whereby if the noise starts to become too much from an agent, and I don't know whether that's the situation or not, well then I think that it's a case that, you know, sometimes you just have to go, look, the juice ain't worth the squeeze anymore. The juice ain't worth the squeeze. We're seeing it a lot with players. The player power is something that's going to be overlooked. I think this off season you've got Johan Vissa, and Emi Martinez isn't in this book yet. You know, for all intents and purposes, you know, people have posted on social media saying they've met him out and about today, and he says he is playing tonight. So I expect him to be in goals tonight. I'm just positing here if he isn't in goals and the hypothetical around it. But he's not done a Johan Vissas that we know of so far. He's not done an Alexander Isak where they've just down tools and said we're not playing for the club anymore. And I think that's another discussion point that people need to have about this offseason is, you know, player power and pushing for moves is becoming more and more prevalent. Like Nicholas Jackson not wanting to come back from Bayern Munich to Chelsea, players looking for those moves and finding avenues to kind of make it more difficult, utilizing social media and so on. That's that's going to become more and more prevalent as time goes on. But as far as we know, Emi Martinez obviously has not done that. We know he hasn't done that. As far as we know, he's saying he's going to play tonight, and there is receipts for that. People have, I've seen two things online actually with people saying they've actually met Emi Martinez today. And I know the skeptic in me will say, what's he going to say? Like, what's he going to say to these people out and about that he's not playing? And he does have plausible deniability to say, well, the offer came in for United. It was accepted by Villa. Villa sat me down. You know, he does have all that plausible deniability if he doesn't play later on. But as of now, from the horse's mouth, from the goalkeeping horse's mouth, from the world's number one's horse's mouth, he says he's playing with Aston Villa tonight. And we have to take that at face value as well. Adam, Mike McGrath has just said as well that Man United has prioritised Lammens. Yeah, I think this is going to flip-flop. I think that could be, you never know, that could just be posturing for Manchester United to say, right, we want Emi Martinez and we're going to just take the guy that you guys want, that Aston Villa, you as Aston Villa want. We're just going to go for your guy. We're going to leave Emi Martinez there after essentially talking to him since last January and saying, yeah, we want you at the club. We'll leave you with the disgruntled employee. That's what the skeptic in me might say as well with regards to that. And it could be a tactic, you know. It absolutely could be a tactic on Manchester United's behalf. But we will not know the answer to this until, you know, in the short on the pitch for either of those two players at Manchester United. And then we'll know what way this whole thing played out. Where else are we? I'm coming down here to a couple of comments. I'm going to scroll down here because I'm not this is not picking on you or anything, Johnny Hull, but I think that there's a lot of context missing behind we've gone backwards as a club. Monchi is useless point. I think that there's a lot of context missing behind that. That's gained traction on Twitter. I don't agree with it. I can debate with anybody over it. If people want to feel that way, absolutely you can. But you know, a lot of people leave out a lot of context with regards to financial issues that the club have inherited from Purslow, and I suppose more recently from Chris Heck, etc. as well. Everybody's love feel how they want to, but I'm not there yet with that one for sure. Where else are we? Sorry, I'm going to scroll down there. A lot of people saying we're not going to get anything out of Crystal Palace today. As Richie Ryan says, the old cliche of club is bigger than the player. Look, we're always going to have to sell players we don't want to sell. But there comes a time where you just have to move on. Like I've made my baby with Aston Villa. I'm not going to change who the club I support. This is like if Emi Martinez wants to leave, it's not. I think that this is Emi Martinez and an agent-led transfer. I would argue that the Jacob Ramsey one wasn't an agent-led or a player-led transfer, but you know this one would be. So we have to treat the two of them kind of differently. And you can kind of say that the club, you know, letting go of their own homegrown players, that is an issue the club have to account to and have to be held accountable for. Absolutely, I've done podcasts on that before. But in instances like where it's come out and it's been regularly reported that X player wants to move and has been in conversation with X club since January, you know, that one has to be held in a completely different esteem, I think, as well, for sure. Where else are we? Richie Ryan again says 40 million minimum. Anything else would be a joke. It's hard to put a price on Emi Martinez with 27 hours to go on the transfer window. Like there's mention about Jadon Sancho. I know that's going to split the fan base right down the middle as well. Do we want to bring in somebody like that who's a ball carrier or reclamation project again? Do we want to do that? Look, a lot of this would be a lot clearer at 7:00 tomorrow as well, for sure. Where else are we? Sorry guys, a lot of the comments are pretty similar as well. I do apologize. Robert K asks, whereas Asensio's terms were supposed to be agreed with him days ago. Yeah, I agreed with him is different, I think, to agreeing with PSG. And I think that there's a lot of balls being juggled with regards to that one. There was talks that, you know, they're putting pressure on him on the move to Fenerbahce again. Mendes is putting pressure on that move as well. If I'm not mistaken, Mendes is the Emi Martinez agent also. I could be wrong on that. Tell me if I'm right or if I'm wrong. So I don't know. There could be an awful lot of counter moves to try and get certain players to certain positions and so on as well. So there's a lot of cloak and dagger, I would imagine, with transfers as well. So a lot of this will become a lot more clear over the next 27 hours or so. Right, I think I'm going to do it at that, guys. Just wanted to come on for 20 minutes and just talk about it. It's absolutely not an enjoyable situation to be in with this, where there's conversations essentially about carving up your team all off season. And we don't know. There's not been clarity on it. I didn't ever expect clarity from the club. But as I've always said, when there is no clarity, anything can fill the vacuum. And if Villa are 2-0 down against Crystal Palace tonight, I think it'll be loud in Villa Park. I think it'll be loud. But then again, I don't think Villa are going to. I think I'm hoping, and I'm more of the opinion that we would hope that this would be a galvanizing effect for Aston Villa tonight. If Emi Martinez is named in the team sheet, that puts a lot of things to bed for the time being anyway. And as we know, as I said, the two people I've seen on Twitter with photographs of Emi Martinez saying they've met him, who said that he will be starting tonight. So I take that in the face value that it absolutely is. But we will talk in more definites, I suppose, when things are agreed and people are actually signed. And then I suppose I can really mout off on what I really think about things then afterwards. But at the moment, this is not an ideal situation. You don't want this to be happening 27 hours out from the end of the transfer window. And it is a bit disheartening, all transfer window. I do agree with everybody. You just see your team kind of carved up and you're trying to work in ways that, over the last couple of transfer windows we've not been used to. But it's still Aston Villa Football Club, and it's still a club that I will always will on and to a fault, I suppose, support through the thick and thin. And I know all you guys will as well. Anyway, see you later, lads, for the team sheet tantrum. Back around 5:45 Irish time. So we'll see you then, and we'll talk more a bit about Palace. Stay safe, stay healthy, and all that's left to say is up the